Hello, and welcome to another episode of TA Tech Unboxed, the podcast that's chatting to the people behind the tools that are built for the TA and HR community. If you are listening to this, don't forget to head over to YouTube where you'll be able to see a demo of this show's guest and every other guest we've had on so far. I am Chris Haslam, and I'm here with my co-host, Mr. Darren Bush. Mr. Darren Bush, how are you?
Chris, summer is here because the lawnmower is going in the background.
The lawnmower is going. We promise we will shut the door during the full show. You don't have to mute because now it's just me and my own echoey voice.
No, that's fine. That's fine. But how are you, Chris?
Very good, thank you. Sun's out, guns out. You're looking handsome as ever, as always, though. So
I don't think so. I think it's just I've been on holiday, and
the tint.
Yeah.
The tint of where did you go?
Near Valencia.
Ooh, south of Valencia, north of Valencia.
North of Valencia, I think.
Ooh,
I believe.
Okay. I've not been to. I've heard Valencia is a great.
Yeah, it's lovely, mate. I recommend it. You enjoy it.
As a vegetarian, Spain is particularly rubbish for me.
Oh, I can imagine. Meat. Yeah,
it's manchego, bravas, pan con tomate.
Yeah,
on repeat for 10 days. So yeah, but love Spain. So beautiful. Going to Barcelona, going to Hyatt BCN.
Oh, nice.
This year. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I assume you're not attending by your reaction.
No, I'm not. No.
Damn it. Well, we're excited about that.
No, that's exciting.
Barcelona. Yeah, very exciting.
Cool. Well, let's go again. You guessing?
Who do we have on today's show, Darren?
Today, Chris, we've got a special guest joining us. We have Luke Shipley, co-founder of Zinc. Welcome to the show, Luke.
Hey, Luke.
Thanks, Darren.
And obviously, when we were doing some digging about you, Luke. But first of all, Luke, actually, maybe just talk about yourself first.
Sure, yeah. So obviously, you've discovered my checkered past. I was a recruiter for 7 years, primarily an agency recruiter, tech recruiter, and almost 6 years ago, Charlotte and I, my partner, started Zinc.
Amazing. And it'd be great to sort of talk about in terms of your journey as well, because you start off as a recruiter, but you've had a couple of startups as well along the way, along this journey.
Yeah. None of them have been anything like Zinc, really. Not software businesses, not sizable businesses. So there's one kind of e-commerce business that I started with some friends. The male leggings business, which you were talking about, which was the Dragon's Den appearance, which wasn't a super serious business. It was kind of a part-time project with some friends, and the agency that I used to run, which was the recruiting agency, which was really kind of a solo endeavor. So neither have been particularly useful for my Zinc journey.
Yeah, but I noticed you played it down a bit on your LinkedIn, but because Chris missed it, I think. Is that right?
I'm still looking for it.
I can hear you tapping on the keyboards as well. By the way.
Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to find it.
Especially hidden it, and that's what I'm taking from that.
It's well hidden. So yeah, why don't you give us a little so we've got your background there, Luke. Why don't we jump into a little bit about Zinc and kind of some founding moments around that? Like what were the pain points that you were exploring at the beginning? What settled you on Zinc? I mean, I've been a fan and I've spoken to you, I don't know if you remember this, but a few times over the years and been a follower of the business. I know you've evolved a little bit, so it'd be great to just unpack some of that stuff.
Yeah. Zinc's in the employee background checking space. We offer global background checks, things like employment references, right to work checks, criminal checks, that sort of thing. And I did experience this pain as a recruiter, not to the extent that you hear about with some other founding journeys where it's such a burning itch that you just have to go and solve it. I sort of had small insights into the background checking world with some of the clients that I used to work with, and could see that it was a very dated industry, and I experienced these clunky products, and I didn't have to use them day in day out, so I wasn't banging my head against the wall, but I could see that things were in a pretty poor state. I was kind of I was more just curious about the industry, and confused as to why it was why there weren't better products available, and I was trying to make the transition into software engineering back in kind of 2015, 2016 when I was running my agency, and Zinc was really a passion project to begin with, which was an outlet for me to try and get more development experience and work on some larger things than the kind of work that I was getting as a sort of freelance developer.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all had experience as a recruiter about the background checks and some of the challenges you've had there. What was it about what were the challenges you were mentioning back in 2015, 16?
I think the most remarkable thing was how bizarre the journey was for candidates. How candidates would experience background checks maybe just being referenced, or like a full range of background checks that some of my candidates would have at financial services companies, and how it was such a black hole for them. They usually felt like they'd been wronged because they weren't too sure what was going on with their information, and they'd just gone through this clunky, horrible candidate journey, and it was clear that the process was not built with any consideration for candidates, essentially.
Yeah, and I noticed. I mean, even with like your branding and your marketing, it's different. It feels fresh, fresh new. Even when you go to your website, and I feel like that's what you're doing here with Zinc. Is that kind of a conscious decision then to move in that direction?
Yeah. We've got a lot of respect for the existing players in the market. They've done some really good, positive things for hiring in general, but there's lots of practices and their general approach to marketing. We wanted to intentionally kind of detach ourselves from. The industry has typically kind of marketed background checks as like a trap, a kind of a scaremongering type approach, like be careful of these people that you're hiring because you could end up in a tricky spot. And we have never really agreed with that kind of messaging and approach, and we wanted to send a message and make it clear that we were thinking about things differently.
Because sorry, I was trying to find the mute button. I really appreciate the fact that you've thought about it from that particular perspective, because historically it's not just clunky; it's often weaponized, isn't it? Background checks for recruiters, and there's a lack of trust in the authenticity of the demand, isn't there?
Yeah. The market has tried to benefit from the lack of transparency in the space. They've tried to benefit from not being particularly clear about um, data processing and the effectiveness of certain practices. And it's actually been to the detriment of the industry, this this lack of transparency. It's meant that background checking is kind of this um, black swan, the kind of part of the hiring process which nobody really has much interest in, and doesn't really know much about, because it kind of goes on behind closed doors, and we've got to do it, but who knows what's really going on, which has kind of isolated the practice from being modernized by recruiters.
You able to explain? I always ask this question about where does Zinc start and where does it end? But you able to explain about like, what you provide to the market? Then what is it that you do, and what is different as well?
Yeah, so on the um, on the face of it, we are a traditional background checking business. We offer the similar kind of checks that you will find with the industry leading competitors. We have a different approach to candidate experience, to data ownership, and to um, being pragmatic in the checking process. So we are kind of radically transparent in comparison to traditional practices in terms of um, explaining to candidates where their data is being sent to and what is going on with their information. And um, we have a different approach to allowing candidates to own their checking report, their check data on Zinc, in order to reuse that information when they come to get checked again. The proposition for the people that buy the product is um, much faster checks than our competitors, because they're tech led rather than um, processed by people, which is still the kind of industry standard, and a better candidate experience because of those kind of core beliefs that we have, and a largely reduced workload in terms of admin around these checks because of the tech led approach.
Just on the question for the candidate checks, if I've had it checked by Zinc, can I reuse that? Will companies accept that? Do you find that that's because in the past it was a struggle. Everyone wants to do their own checks.
Yeah. This was a it was just a hypothesis back in 2017-18 when we first started Zinc, that it didn't really make sense that you're repeating the same process over and over throughout your career, and sometimes within the same term of employment, being checked multiple times, handing over the same information, and repeating these processes. But since founding Zinc, there's been a new government framework in the UK that was launched a couple of years ago now, called the Trust Framework, which is it provides a framework for how identity data should be exchanged between businesses in the UK, and it promotes reusability. It sort of it mandates that if an organization is trying to share data to be reused in a certain prescribed format with another organization which is part of this trust framework, then it has to be accepted as a trusted party on this framework. What that means in practice is that if you did a right to work check with Zinc, and then you came to get checked again by another organization, and you tried to reuse your Zinc data as part of this new government framework, that other organization would have to trust Zinc as another body on this framework.
Oh, useful. And who are most of your clients? Are they mainly coming from you on a permanent basis, or do you find on the contracts, the temporary basis, you're used quite extensively as well?
It is a real mix. We work heavily in regulated domains in the UK,
Yeah.
where certain checks are prescribed by industry regulators. So we work heavily in financial services, healthcare, and education sector, in energy and utilities, predominantly in the UK. We work broadly with tech organisations as well, but that's the kind of main theme, is regulated domains.
Cool. Can you explain as well to people around this concept of unified references you get mentioned?
Yeah, sure. So when we first started Zinc, it was actually a referencing only product. So my experiences checking as a recruiter were mainly around referencing. So that's where we started out. We had a referencing tool which it was mainly focused on kind of professional referencing, competency referencing, where you're trying to get detailed information about candidates. And we've come on quite a long journey since then, moved into the background checking space, and we're doing more formal checks than we used to. And this unified referencing product of ours allows you to combine formal referencing, where you're trying to obtain things like verifying work dates and job titles, which we can do instantly from government sources like HMRC, with more detailed referencing, whether that's competency referencing or referencing to help onboard an individual. It's a big kind of step forward for Zinc in enabling people to do very holistic referencing and get that information back very quickly and very easily, in a kind of a single click with a candidate.
And this is the future. This is where you're seeing most clients wanting or asking for this kind of unified referencing, and from the candidate side as well.
So I think referencing is quite divisive. A lot of people are, just don't have any time for it at all, which is fair enough. It's been when it's not been practiced very intentionally, people have got pretty useless results from it for a long time. And then there's some groups of people that are on the side of the fence, that they only believe in kind of employment verification type referencing, the formal type of referencing that I was talking about, where you just get work dates and job titles verified, and that might be driven by their regulator, or it might be just driven by their own experiences and beliefs, that they think that that is the only use for referencing. And then there's another side of the fence where there is still, believe it or not, a camp of people or group of people that like to do competency referencing, or what we call onboarding referencing, where they're trying to get detailed information from previous colleagues, previous managers, to help inform some decision or something a bit more complex. So I wouldn't say it's really kind of taken off just yet. It's not like there's a huge demand for this type of thing yet, but we believe that this is a it's the best approach to referencing.
Mm.
We kind of see value in both practices, and we wanted to offer the opportunity to kind of bring these things together and show people that there is value in in either practice.
There was a couple of years ago. There was a big noise around blockchain on referencing. Has that materialized? What were you seeing about that in that space?
Honestly, no, it's not materialized. um, I think the sort of theory behind it kind of makes sense. It adds up. The technology could potentially be useful, especially in Zinc's world, where we're promoting the reuse of information and the kind of trustworthiness of it will start to become more important and come into question many years down the road after many times reusing that information. But the problem's not really there today to solve, so that the technology is not really necessary.
Yeah. We're going to maybe steer the conversation as well on other topics that I know you've spoken about and are interested and posted about on LinkedIn. One is around the quality over quantity. You talk about quality of hire as a key KPI. Can you elaborate a little bit more about why we should shift our focus from just filling roles to making more quality hires?
I think this is kind of the flavour of the month at the moment, right? This is not really a very contrarian view today. That might have been a little bit more tasty a couple of years ago when growth at all costs was a bit more of the trend. But I think this is kind of sort of the common practice now, right, where people are trying to build or care startups are trying to be a little bit more considerate about building sustainable organizations that are going to turn a profit at some point. Yeah, that's really all that it was speaking to, that growth at all costs and hiring very quickly clearly
I'm with you.
caused some problems, and those things have kind of played out very kind of clearly and publicly in the
Poorly.
last couple of years.
And like the agenda of hire as many as you can, and inside that you'll capture great people, and the others will cycle through the business anyway. Right? It's like that is such a sucky way to look at growing a business. We should have always been looking at quality hire, but I think people, particularly company founders, leadership teams, maybe haven't known how to do it right. So, any opinions on kind of how people approach it poorly?
I think that people have just underestimated the complexity that comes with a larger organization and a bigger team, and not really whether they've not had to solve that problem themselves, whatever it is, the extra complexity in the organizational structure, or in the kind of project communication complexity. I think that's just been underestimated in the past, and that is changing. So
You also speak about can experience a lot, and I'd like to get your take. Someone who was in the working on the recruitment side, say 7 years ago, and you're now the supplier side. From an outside point of view, how have you seen like the can experience being talked about or spoken about, or just in terms of your perception about can experience as well over these years?
Um,
I hope you didn't pick that last bit up. I'll have
Someone's
to.
at the front door.
Yeah, I forgot to unmute the Alexa device.
um, I think it's the topic kind of hasn't moved on much in recent years. There was a bit of a shift in my time as a recruiter. Sort of from like 2010 to 2020, not quite that long, but there was a shift in the importance of the topic of candidate experience, and sort of in the past 5-6 years of me being involved in Zinc, candidate experience has remained a kind of top level discussion topic of importance for companies. But when it comes down to it, um, people aren't people aren't going to pay for a better a candidate experience. They're not going to really shift their budgets around in a meaningful way to to improve their candidate experience a little bit. It's definitely a consideration, and it's a top level topic of discussion, but it's not.
Do you mean that independently of anything else? So like no one's coming to just invest in CX on its own, but because I certainly feel like CX is a significant consideration in anything that I might purchase for a client or expected of us. But I agree with you. No one's coming to us and going, Chris, our candidate experience sucks. Like, we want you to come and help us be better at it. Is that what you mean?
I agree with that point. What I meant was that it's not getting sort of top level budget allocation. It's trying to improve your candidate experience by several percentage points isn't going to get a big level of investment from TA teams, unfortunately, and maybe rightly so. But it's certainly a consideration.
I mean, you've obviously picked this up because you invested heavily in the candidate experience for your customers and for the candidates as well. What was the reason that drove you then to do that? And the second question is, how come other suppliers, not in your space, because I don't want you to speak about your competitors, but how come you haven't seen other companies not focusing on it so much?
The reason, probably naively, that we decided it was a sort of core founding belief for Zinc was we saw something that didn't look right in the market, and that was just a kind of wrong that we wanted to right. And what we didn't really appreciate at the time was that people aren't going to take on a large project to switch from one supplier to another or maybe pay more than their existing supplier for candidate experience alone. That's not going to be enough to move the needle for a lot of teams. It's certainly a consideration, but it's still not getting the investment that it should.
I realised I had one question I'd forgot to ask earlier in the show, which was about Zinc itself, and you set this up with your partner Charlotte, right?
Yeah.
As a dynamic as well, I'd just love to obviously from founders when you work with your partner, how has that been over that journey?
It's been incredible, to be honest. It's not easy, as you can imagine, but it's been a amazing kind of journey to share together, and uh, I don't think Zinc would have been sort of possible in the way that it has been for me if I wasn't going on this journey with Charlotte, because obviously startups kind of take over your life, and when your sort of life partner is part of that, that makes certain things easier, and maybe certain things harder, with sort of some kind of work life separation. But yeah, I would absolutely recommend it to anyone. Uh, you're certainly going to learn more about yourselves and as individuals and as a partnership, than you would do if you didn't take it on.
It's great. It's great because we have people on the show who've but we've got siblings who set up and partners as well, and or best friends, and it's always good to hear that dynamic as well, especially for those people who listen to the show. Actually, might be thinking they might be exactly the same, working in TA, want to set their own company up. So I'm sure you sleep, eat Zinc all the time, and talk about it all the time.
Yeah. The sort of the work life balance is the harder part of the partnership. But hey, we're still together, and Zinc is still going strong. So I guess
Yeah.
I would be advocating for
Yeah.
it, but maybe I wouldn't be in the same way if things hadn't panned out like this.
The buzzer is gone for 30 minutes. So we've hit that already.
Has.
And it's nice timing as well for the two questions, actually. So I'll actually probably start because we would segue nicely into this, which is what's next?
I still can't find the Dragon's Den thing. I've been trying the whole time, Luke.
Yeah.
My bad. Sorry, go Darren.
Yeah. What's next for yourself, Luke, and for Zinc?
So one of our teams is working on a rechecking product right now, which is something that's popular in our space in regulated domains, which allows companies to sort of go fully automated on their rechecks, which has typically been a real headache if you're in a certain role in a regulated company. There's a huge amount of admin involved for HR teams, and the pain for employees being rechecked. And with Zinc's reusable data and our integrations, we're going to be soon releasing this rechecking product, which will allow you to hand all of that work off to Zinc and make life so much easier for employees being rechecked. So that's what's next for Zinc. What's next for me? More Zinc. Me and Charlotte have recently moved to the West Country, to Somerset. So we're kind of getting settled in a new area.
Very nice.
Lovely. That brings us to our last question, which is, what other tools, Luke, have you seen in the TA or HR space that have been really impressive to you? Of course, they don't have to be in your circle. We don't expect competition, but is there any in particular that you've been super impressed with?
This is totally subject to recency bias, that I've just been playing with this tool today. and excuse me, it's not really a TA thing, but
Doesn't matter.
there's a lovely little platform called Progression, which helps teams to benchmark different levels within roles and organizations. And it's certainly been really helpful for me in the last 24 hours. And it looks really, really nicely developed. So, yeah, hopefully it would be useful to other people.
It's in our space. It's kind of in our space, isn't it? It's in the HR world. Oh, perfect.
What's the product called?
I think the domain is Progression App. Sorry, no. Yeah, progression.co, which is, I think it's a UK.
Okay, yeah, got it. Define and measure your career growth for your team.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome. In which case, that brings us to the end of this week's show. Luke, how can folks reach out to you, get in touch, to get a demo or whatever? What's the best way to get folks to do that?
LinkedIn is probably the best spot to get in touch. If you wanted a demo, then the website is zincwork.com. But if you wanted to get advice about background checks or chat about anything kind of people or talent related, I'm interested. So yeah, LinkedIn's the best place to connect.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Well, guys, if you want to get a demo, we know Luke's the man. Reach out and either point, of course, run it yourself, Luke, or point to somebody else. And that brings us sadly to the end of this week's show. It's been wonderful chatting to you and learning about Zinc. Don't forget, if you're watching this, guys, Luke and the team are going to share a demo that we'll be housing that will be connected to this somewhere in the comments or the end of the recording. So don't forget to check that out. Give us your feedback. Let us know what you think. Luke, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Luke.
Thanks so much. That's TA Tech Unboxed signing off.